Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, have you ever been assigned any sort of, workplace training, and you're just sitting at your screen going, ugh, I can't even. How fast can I get my clicker mouse to go to get through this training as quickly as possible? Because I don't have any time to do this. Well, here's the thing, you guys. Adults, we learn differently. And I have a feeling that our guest today is going to be enlightening us about ways to make workforce training actually stick with these adult brains that we got working that are very, very different from how children learn, and actually make workplace training fun, engaging, exciting, and interactive. These are the things that we are simplifying today. And my special guest is Ryan McCrea. He's a talent, learning, and leadership development executive. He's also the president of St. Louis Organizational Development Network. He also just wrote a book called Quick Bites of Insight. With more than 20 years of experience helping organizations develop stronger leaders, better teams, and healthier cultures, Ryan is known for his practical, candid perspective on leadership, manager development, and what truly works in the real world. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Ryan McCrea. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
I am so excited to nerd out with you about this. And I'm sure during that intro, you're cringing because you're like, ugh, why do adults learn like this? Is it true,
a little
though,
bit,
right?
Yes. Time is a big thing for a lot of individuals. So when they're thinking about training and they get that, especially that compliance training in their mailbox, they're like, I don't want to do this. How can I click through it quicker? Can I take a test and just not have to do it at all? I hear those things all the time in a lot of the organizations that I've worked for, and yeah, I get it. And I understand that. And some certain compliance trainings, that might be the case. We hope that for a lot of the other types of trainings that are really skills based, that hopefully it's a little bit different reaction.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of things at play there. I think one, people seem to be surprised and shocked when they get assigned workplace training. They go, I don't have time for this. And so that's one piece that's working against you, right? The concept of time or lack thereof. But then also the concept of an adult brain versus a child's brain. A child's brain is like a sponge. They can learn French in like 4 days. But us, we struggle with 3 steps to do anything, right?
100%. Yes. I think, the idea is that as adults, we don't want to be pandered to. I think part of it too, when it comes to training, I think sometimes training tries to pander to individuals. It tries to give too much fluff as well. So a lot of times, I think it's quicker, easier, faster. I mean, think about like today's day and age. If you had something, your microwave's not working, or let's go something a little less dangerous. Let's say you've got something that you put together is just not working. Like in the past, we would have went to a manual. And we would have looked at this 35-page manual and try to find the piece that helped us understand how we were going to fix those things. I haven't done that in like 10 years.
No.
I mean, all of us go right to YouTube and we try to find the video that's for whatever that we're trying to fix, and we spend time watching that. We pause it and we do it step by step as we're going through that different video. We want it to be practical and real and kind of in time and make sense for kind of what we really need and want at that time. So a lot of what I talk about with training too is like, if it's not necessarily practical, relevant, and in the flow of work of like when you really need it, that's when people really want training. Like right training, right person, right time. It's a big part of all of this.
That makes sense. And I mean, obviously, you actually wrote a book and titled it Quick Bites of Insight, Micro-Size Learning on Work and Leadership. Talk to me about this concept of micro-sized learning. What does that mean? And why does it work so well for us busy adults at work?
So microlearning is an interesting thing. It's generally in the term, at least when you hear it kind of in the L&D world, it's probably called microlearning for the most part. And I would say that it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast just in the last day or two here with somebody who had just wrote a really great book. It was her second book on microlearning. And the podcast host asked her, what's the definition of microlearning? And after about 5 minutes of talking through it, she ended it with like, there really isn't a definitive definition on microlearning, because if you ask 10 people, they will tell you 10 different things.
Yep.
It really comes down to, they will tell you, like, some people believe microlearning should only be less than 3 or 2 minutes long. Some people believe that it has to be some sort of in a virtual format, like that is really microlearning. The reality to me is, when I really think about microlearning, like, what is it, is I see it as like this short, quick, fast way to kind of hit and give that knowledge on a very specific topic. It should be very practical, though, because what microlearning isn't, and a lot of times people think it is you take this really long topic and you slim it down to 3 minutes. That's not going to work. There is a lot of things that you are not going to be able to talk to somebody about in a 90-second video or a 2-minute video or whatever format that is. Of course, mine is a book. So that even just breaks the idea that everything that is a microlearning has to be some sort of a video or something very quick that we're looking at. Not necessarily. Mine is 300 to 500 words, and it doesn't take you more than probably a minute or a minute and a half to read one of the chapters. So that's still microlearning too. So why is it important for leaders, and why does it work for us as adults? Is we're busy, quite honestly. I think that's the biggest problem that I hear in what we do in learning and leadership development, is just, I don't have time. There's too much on my plate. And especially managers and leaders right now, that's getting worse and worse and worse every day. When you think about it. I mean, you now are trying to manage, and have been, some people remote, some people in the office. You've got all these organizations that are just shedding people. So what happens to an organization when you're shedding as many people as they are? Well, what I've seen and what's really happening is you're flattening the organization in most of these times. So now you're going from maybe a manager that used to have 4 or 5 people to now having 10 people. You also are seeing a lot of these like baby boomers that are starting to retire, and they're either not backfilling their positions, or what they're doing is they're backfilling it with someone who is much younger, that doesn't have the experience and doesn't have the knowledge, and probably hasn't been given the training that they need to really be a good leader, even to have 4 or 5 people, better yet to have 10 people. So that's kind of getting flattening as well. So it's just, leading is getting more complicated. Throw AI in there. We can talk about that too later, but throw AI in there. That's a whole nother part of this as well. Leadership's getting more complicated. It's getting harder. You're starting to see more player coaches, where they're not only just running the department, but they're doing the work. So they're a sales leader, but they also have 15 accounts that they're the sales manager on. Well, that's a recipe for disaster, let's be honest. So I think microlearning is beneficial in the sense that you can maybe get those important things that you need to know, that important skills or knowledge, a little bit quicker. And you can also get it, maybe in the flow of work, hopefully. Again, right place, right training, right time. Like, I think that's a big one in a lot of different ways. But I would say too, with microlearning, is it can't be the end all be all. Like, microlearning is not the only format. It is part of a bigger, broader learning ecosystem. I'm not saying that a normal full-size book isn't great. Those are great too. I'm not saying that a great podcast isn't wonderful. And same thing with an 8-hour or 2-day class that you might go through for something like Crucial Conversations. Those are all important parts of the learning ecosystem. Microlearning is one of those things. It is not the only thing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And what I hear in what you're saying there is it's not always about length. I mean, length is important. Micro is bite size, right? But it's impact. Is it a piece of learning that will spark an idea or a thought for the student, for the learner, so that, it's something that just kind of is a hook in, gives them a prompt or a thought or a new idea that they can simmer on as they're doing the rest of their work, right?
Learning is about reflection. I mean, that's a really big part of this. When I talk to people about learning and what we do, the reality is that you go into the class, you go in there, you learn something. Hopefully you take it in, you take as much as you possibly can in, but it's really about what you do after that. And I often say this at the end of a lot of my trainings, like, I'll say, okay, what's that 1 or 2 things you're going to take away and you're going to apply? Because if not, you've wasted all your time and you've wasted my time in this class today. So it's all about, how do you take what you've learned and how do you apply it? So if you ever heard of the forgetting curve?
Yes.
So the forgetting curve is something that we talk about a lot. And quite honestly, it's Ebbinghaus is the person that originally did that almost 100 years ago. They noticed the idea of that little snippet we always hear from people. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Well, this was the research that really looked at if you don't use it, you're going to lose it almost 100 years ago. There's been a lot of research and it's been looked at, and it's a little bit more complicated than just if you don't use it, you lose it. But the reality is that the longer time frame that you don't use something, the likelihood that it is going to go away. And same thing here. So microlearning is helpful in that way, but it also can be really helpful. The way I really like microlearning as a follow-up, because again, you need to like re-engage yourself in that concept and reflect. You need to reflect a little bit more about what are you going to be doing? What could you be doing better? What are those things? And to make sure that it doesn't disappear, I really like microlearning not as just a training option, but as a follow-up, continued training option. It's one of the best ways to say, okay, I've been through that 7-hour class. How did you use that model this week? How did you, use the Center for Creative Leadership's situation behavior impact model to give somebody feedback this week? Like really giving them practical, thoughtful ways to think through this. And so I really like microlearning too, not as just, okay, yes, it can be a version of learning. It's also a great way to make sure that there's retention.
Yeah, it sounds like you can do a micro learning and a micro action, right? So after you've taken the course or, gone to the workshop the next day, building in that 5-10 minute one-on-one conversation with your boss and say, here's the top 1 or 2 things that I learned from this. And here's what I think I should be doing next with this. Because isn't it true, Ryan? Like you learn best when you teach others.
100%. That can be a huge part of it. You definitely can learn a lot by teaching other individuals. When I think about microlearning and kind of retention and why this is all really important, I think a lot of times people put it on the L&D department for retention. And there are some things we can be doing, like I talked about. And I've seen people in the L&D field that like, man, we've had an awesome class. We killed it. And then that's it. They don't do any of that follow-up we're talking about. Like, how do we make sure that people kept it and they're using it and they're learning from it, and maybe behaviors are changing or the skills are getting stronger? Like, you're not really seeing some of those things. But I think what you just said is also a big part of this. When it comes to learning and leadership development, the only people that are doing learning and leadership development aren't in the L&D department. The most important 2 people doing learning and leadership development is that person being committed to going back and reflecting and making sure that they're going and repeating it. They're repeating that behavior. They're doing it. They're using it. And a big part of that is doing it in the real world. So making sure that you are really getting a chance to do that. I mean, think about when we go out and we teach kids soccer, you wouldn't say, okay, go and learn how to play soccer in this book, and then next week you're going to go play soccer. Like, no, they need the real world aspect of it. They need the repetition of playing the games of soccer. When you're learning something like emotional intelligence, that isn't different just because you're learning it in the classroom. If it's just sitting in your head, it's going to go away. Like, you've got to do these things. That's important. Managers have a huge, huge part in this. So a lot of the leadership development programs I've ran in the past was actually kicking them off to say, hey, managers, you have a huge stake in this. You have a huge part of this. This is not a great, your person's in the program. You're going to show up on the last day when we have the lunch, when everybody graduates, and that's going to be the first time that you're going to talk about anything in this. No, you have a responsibility. You need to be having conversations with your people. I made it easy. People with a lot of the programs I was in too is just saying, hey, like, here's the session. And we do a monthly or a quarterly email to the leaders and to the individuals in the program and say, hey, okay, here's what we talked about this last quarter or this last month. And here's 4 or 5 recommendations of topics or questions that I think you guys should discuss. So like, here's some things to dig into a little bit more. Also, and one of the last things I would always have on that is, how can you apply this? So what project, what experience can you do to make sure that you're actually using this and building this skill up is a huge, huge part of that too.
It's huge. And I think that that's the simple reframe here that I hope if you guys are listening and you manage people, that you really, really hear this, if nothing else. You as the manager, as the people leader, are a running partner. You run alongside each person that you manage that's on your team. Does that mean that you do the work for them? Absolutely not. You're running your own race. But when you are a running partner, you're also accountability, right? And so those check-ins, those reflection moments, those real world application opportunities, they could be little short spurts, 5 minutes. We're not talking a 30-minute sit down meeting. And even better, like be literal, like go out and take a walk around the campus and have that 5-minute meeting, and conversation. So you get your steps in, you get that reinforcement of learning, and, it's a win-win for everybody, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I do love a walking meeting. Who doesn't? And I think even thinking about one-on-ones and how you're giving feedback a little bit differently, because a lot of times people and leaders maybe don't do that because they feel like they don't have time. Well, I would say, are you having one-on-ones with the people on your team? If you are having one-on-ones, you definitely have time. You're probably just thinking about one-on-ones the wrong way, because a lot of one-on-ones in many organizations are crazy tactical. I actually have a whole chapter in the book about this too, about like the power of real one-on-ones and doing them well. And so that's one where if you are already having one-on-ones with your people, you have time to have good conversations and follow up with people on something like a learning that they went to, or a micro learning that they took, or a class that they took, or a program that they're in. You have time. You need to be intentional about it.
Yeah. So again, to reiterate what you just said, what really helps adults retain new information is relevance, repetition, and real world application. That repetition, gosh, that is so important because, I find that I learn new things and it slips right out of my brain, right out of my ear while I sleep at that night. The next morning, I'm like, woohoo, I'm like a goldfish. Hello world. What's happening here today? So like it's the repetition to build those new neural pathways in your brain, to connect the dots of what I've learned and how does this apply to my work right now? And more importantly, how does this apply to the business priorities this quarter as well? So let's shift gears and let's talk about the big old elephant in the room. Let's talk about AI, because as AI becomes part of everyday work, I mean, the way I use AI now versus 12 months ago is significantly different. How do we use it to support learning without weakening critical thinking and human skills? Because I think sometimes, you go, oh, I didn't know AI could do that. And then 3 months later, you're like, oh, AI is doing all of the heavy lifting for my brain. I can just coast, right? No. Ryan, enlighten us.
Oh, this is one of the biggest challenges with AI. I think AI is wonderful. I think it has a lot of opportunities as a tool to make processes, systems, and productivity for day-to-day people better and easier. I think there's tons of opportunity there. I think the biggest fear that I've seen a lot in the educational institutions, because I've gotten a chance over the last year to really spend more time with people that are deans of MBA programs and that are working in different educational institutions, saying like, ugh, like how do we do this? We know AI needs to be part of it. It's not going away at anytime soon. But how do we make sure that the people that are coming out of our MBA program still have critical thinking skills? And I would say it's the same thing for individuals that are in the work environment too. It kind of takes me back to that movie WALL-E. It's like what I really think about. If you remember WALL-E, like there was that movie where, okay, so all the humans were like overly reliant on technology and robots, and they became fat and lazy and stupid and floated around in chairs. And like, I think more than ever, that could really happen in our world. So the thing that is important is if you really do have career aspirations to do more, you're going to have to make sure that you have critical thinking skills. I think critical thinking skills is a huge part of it. Like I love AI. AI does not have context. AI is great at looking at patterns, but that is not everything. So while working with some of these educational institutions, there was one called SLU here in town, St. Louis University, and I was working with the dean, Jackson Nickerson, and we were doing. He shared his book with me because I was doing a session with him. He was doing a little bit of a talk on this, and then him and I were doing a fireside chat. The book was called A Bot and a Prayer. Like I thought, funny book. Him and one of his colleagues wrote it. And in there, they talk about really using it kind of as a tool. So when I really think about, and this is my metaphor for this, not necessarily theirs, but I think about like maybe a new apprentice like on a site that's learning how to build a house. Like, there's a lot of skills you have to learn to make sure that you're building that house correctly and safely. If you are just delegating that experience to someone else, if you're sharing like, hey, go build that wall. I don't want to do it. Go do this, which is what we might be doing with AI. You're never going to build that skill set. You're never going to get there. So that's what people have to be very careful about, is just giving over their work to AI. They need to think about it more as a tool in their tool belt. How I think about this is, like, again, if you're an apprentice and you're learning how to build houses, this is an amazing hammer. It's not just your normal hammer that you'd get, but this is the hammer that can tell you, you know what? Your swing was a little off. You could potentially hurt yourself if you keep doing it this way. How about you potentially do this that way? It's giving you that extra context. It's giving you an opportunity to be better and help you. It's like a smart tool, like a smart hammer. And that is in a lot of ways is what AI is like. So what they really talk about, kind of getting back to SLU, is how do you use this to kind of help yourself? I think, so from a critical thinking perspective, I love this model that they have called the AHA model. So the AHAH model. And it's a framework for really using generative tools. And what that means, it's an acronym, that AHA. It means ask the right question. So it's got to start with a question. Human first. So that means based on whatever question you were asking, you come up with something or your thought or your hypothesis on what this is or your draft of that email first. AI second. Human last. Again, you need to be thinking about it. You put it into AI. You let AI help in many, many ways, because it's a wonderful help. And it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful partner. But again, we all know that it can do things like hallucinate. So there's got to be that human last in there too. So that one is a big one for me. I think when we're thinking about help people learning how to use AI and how to think about AI, it gets back to really making sure that we're living in the spirit and we're teaching people to think about this AHA acronym. So ask the right question, human first, AI second, human last.
I really like that acronym. That is such a great framework. And by the way, you guys, everything that we're talking about on today's episode, you can find over the show notes at thesimplifiers.com. So if you're literally on a treadmill and you're like, how am I ever going to remember this? Or you're driving in your car, girl, I got you. Like, you just go back to thesimplifiers.com to the show notes, click on this episode. You'll find all of these resources that Ryan shares today. But, you know, a couple of things that I'm doing differently right now in 2026 when it comes to AI that really, I think, make a big difference. One is you slightly change how you're writing your prompts. Instead of saying, hey, build me a project plan for blah, 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 I actually like to use prompts like this. Coach me on the process of building a project plan for X, Y, and Z. And when you put in the coach me part, then you have a trainer in your pocket that is basically going, okay, well, these are the things that you might need to start thinking about. What would you think about our risks to this project? You know, what's your SWOT analysis? What's the SWOT analysis? Oh, let me tell you, blah, 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 blah. That's one. Two, I just recently facilitated a training workshop for Dallas HR, the SHRM chapter, and it's HR 201. It's specifically for higher level HR leaders and strategic leaders. And one of the modules in it is talking about using AI at that higher strategic level. And yeah, I could have just said, okay, everybody pull out your laptops and we're going to, do live demos and just type things into ChatGPT and bish, bosh, boosh, done. But I actually did the complete opposite. I said, everybody close your laptops and you're going to try to solve for this problem. Like, say you're going to make a one slide board report to announce, a new initiative and where it's at. You're going to build it on paper using your human brain, draw it out on paper, write your top headline, write what your top KPI is that you're going to report on, and write your one thing that you're going to ask for, right? All on paper. And then you're going to literally write what you think is the best prompt to put into AI to get to the answer for this. Like, how do I optimize this? So everybody writes their ChatGPT prompt. And trust me, Ryan, there were lots of eyeballs in the room going, oh, this would be so much faster if I could just pull out Copilot right now and just do the thing. And I'm like, no, wait. And so when they did the process of actually using their brains first and doing the work and then writing the prompt first, then I got a couple of very courageous people to come up to the stage and say, okay, let's see what the human did. And now let's write your prompt into AI and see what it outputs, right? And see really which one was better, right? And there was learning because some of the human there's discernment, there's emotional intelligence, there's nuance that the AI just couldn't capture. But then on this side, it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about laying out the graphic of the slide in this way to make it more compelling, easier to read and easier to digest. So doing the old school pen and paper way, your people might really push back on it. But at the end, they were like, oh, I see what you did there, Mary. I see what you did. It's smart.
I love that you did it that way. And think about it. You just did the AHA method in person without knowing that the AHA method even existed. Like, that's exactly what you did. You asked them to think about it. You made them write it down first. Then they thought about the prompt that they were going to put in there. Then they had to think about it later. They also learned, it doesn't know some things, so it doesn't have the context that I know or what I know about my business or that business problem. But it also is maybe sometimes, especially for a lot of people, I think about like our friends like engineers and accountants and others, that like creativity may not be their thing. That is one thing that I think it can be really helpful for. I think it's a wonderful partner for creativity, for figuring out different things, for what this looks like. Heck, I use it a lot for the book, like marketing and thinking about different ways to market and how to do that and different ways to write it and think about it. Like, I've got my ideas, I put it in there, but it gives me ways to think about things that I haven't thought about it that way. So I mean, that's the real power, I think, with AI, if we're using it right.
Right. And that's literally the follow-up prompt is, here's my thing, whatever it is, the slide, the project plan, the whatever. Give me my blind spots. What am I missing in this output? And then they go, well, hey, have you thought about blah, 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 blah. And ChatGPT is really good about this lately. You ask a question and it goes, okay, here you go. You want me to create this next? And you go, oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
And one after that, yes, please. I always say please to the robots because, you never know. I grew up with Terminator in my childhood. So,
same thing. I understand.
So then what does it take to turn training into actual real behavior change on the job? And not just like a good learning moment in the room. As you said, like it's sure completion reports are great. But like, I want to see return on investment. I want to see training leading to better customer experience, leading to better business results. What would you say there?
I think it goes back to a little bit of what we talked about earlier in the sense of it's about repetition and real world experience. Mm-hmm. So we have to give people the reps in, like give them the opportunity. Again, going back to the leader, how, and that person, how do I go get a chance to do this? I think, how do we know that we're getting a return on investment there? Well, I think that's the piece where you've got to really understand all of this from a metric perspective. So what are you looking at? Like, what does this look like? Did you have a pre, and can you look at a post? Do you know where someone's behavior was before versus what their behavior is now? You have to think about, and sometimes there's limitations in what we do in L&D because businesses don't necessarily want to do some of these things. But sure, anytime that we can do some of those things, that's what we really want to know. So at one of the last organizations I was at, we were running a new leader development program. And what we had started partnering with our HR analytics group on was, okay, we really want to see if this thing is, has efficacy. Is it really doing what we think it should be doing as a program? So for the good and bad of it, as it was coming towards the end of the program, it was never a discussion that it wouldn't be anything but required, but it ended up switching last moment that it was not a required thing and people could decide whether they wanted to go through the new leader development program or not. So I didn't love that, but what it did give me was a really great experiment. Because after a year of having individuals go through that program, we had a really nice sample size of people that had completed 80% or more of it or had graduated. We also had a really great sample size of people that had completed 20% or less or never even started it.
Just because it was required and just because in their brain they're like, versus, oh, you're right?
Yeah. So the people that were just wanted to do it and took the time and took the energy, took the effort, where versus required, the organization was scared. Like the pushback I got was really from executive and from executive leadership and HR at the time, because they were like, I don't know that we can make this required. I'm like, I've been at 5 other organizations. I've never been in an organization where we don't want to require new manager training for a new manager because they're literally changing their world. They're going from being a good accountant, salesperson, engineer to you have a whole new job. Yes, your experience and knowledge of that area is going to be a great transfer, but you now have a very different life and a very different job when you take over the management role. So they were like, we don't really want to do that. But what that really did then is gave me the opportunity to look at that program and say, okay, well, let's look at things like performance ratings. Let's look at employee engagement ratings. Let's look at all these different metrics that we could potentially have to see whether this is really doing something. Like, is it moving the needle for the people? Because I was able to compare the people that had completed and the people that haven't been completing it. And where there's statistically significant differences between those two scenarios and situations. And those are the types of things when I'm an L&D that like get me kind of hyped up and exciting, because again, it's all about repetition. It's all about making sure they're getting that real world experience, that they're doing it. They're building that muscle, because all of this is like going to the gym and building the muscle. You got to do it. You got to put the reps in. You got to put heavier weights on every once in a while. You got to have those harder conversations, give that harder feedback sometimes if you want to get good at giving feedback. And so that's part of it, is you have to do some of those things. But it's, can we see if it actually is moving the needle like we say? And in some organizations, they honestly don't care about it. The investment into the people is enough. And I've worked for those types of organizations before. It's nice. I still want to know those metrics for my own reasoning and to make sure that we're working on the right things. But some other organizations, especially now in this day and age, are going to really want to make sure that if they're investing in L&D, like that you're actually getting something out of it and the needle is being moved. And so that's a big part for me too. Like, how do you have to do the measurement to see whether things or behaviors are changing. Now, if you can connect it to business aspects, like, okay, well, customer service is going up, we're taking less time to be able to do this, or we're seeing that completion of this is going up based on whatever key important metrics are for whatever that department is. That's kind of exciting, because even within that earlier situation I was giving you an example of, there was a lot of people that were in our customer service area, managers, new managers and leaders in the customer service area. So it was kind of fun because we could slice some of that out a little bit and maybe connect it a little bit more to some of their sales and response metrics, and working in an area like that too. So if you can do that, that's like gold. That's gold.
Yes.
It rarely happens, but if you can do it, it's gold.
I think that it is such a huge paradigm shift. I mean, in the book that I've got coming out as well this spring is all about that paradigm shift. Better employee experience equals better customer experience, which equals better business results. And guess what? Really great learning and development, leadership development is better employee experience, because it's all about how you package it to your workers as well. What you're saying to them is, hey, I want to invest in you and upskilling you for however long you stay in this organization. We hope that when you do exit for whatever reason, you're going out with better skills, better equipped to, serve the world as a whole, right? So leadership development is not a kind of situation. It's like, oh, you chose me for that? I'm really excited to take this, and I'm going to find the time in my super busy schedule to carve out to do this work, right? That's a whole different conversation, because let's face it, our human brains also really struggle with change. We hate change. This is going to change my schedule this week, this month. I can't add in a mentorship program, blah, 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 blah. But then if you can reframe and really talk about the why behind the work, why are you investing your time into this training, this learning, this program? Because it's going to make your life a lot easier, your team a lot more efficient. And hey, your performance reviews are probably going to increase when you implement these new skills. This is it. It's all about how you package it up and communicate it out to your workforce, right?
100%. I think part of that too is really people knowing themselves. So how are you defining career development, and how are you defining development? What does that really look like? What are the expectations in the organization? Or maybe there aren't expectations in the organization, but what does that look like? And how are you helping people understand that? Because that's where people often really struggle. I spent a lot of my career helping people think about career development, and it all starts with self-awareness. All starts with self-awareness. You've got to know what you're good at, got to know what you're not so good at. You got to know what you really enjoy doing, what you don't enjoy doing, what type of experiences you want to get. Once you know and understand some of those things, then you can start saying, okay, these are the 2 or 3 things that I really need to either be really amazing at what I do right now, or for that next thing that I really want to do next. That future goal, that future career that I know that I really want. And then you have to figure out how you're going to get that. And it gets back to, again, all the different ways that we talked about. Is it in a program? Are you going to go to a class? Is it going to be a micro learning? Are you going to go and do something on LinkedIn Learning? Are you going to find a mentor or a coach that can really help you do some of those different things? So there's a lot of different avenues to be able to build that skill set that you might potentially need to be even better at what you're at right now or going forward in the future. And that's part of that bigger learning ecosystem. Again, microlearning is just one of those things in a bigger, broader learning ecosystem. My book is just one of those things in that learning ecosystem. If somebody wants to be prepared to be a good manager, well, they could pick up my book. If somebody wants to just remind themselves or is certain areas that they struggle, it's got 60 different topics in it. They can pull it out. They can use it as kind of a handbook almost any way that they want to. That's what a lot of early feedback I'm getting from people is like, I bought one for home and I actually have one to sit at my desk at work because I want to be able to pull it up when I know that I'm having that struggle about how am I getting feedback or how am I working in this situation or how am I looking at this? And I want to be able to go and just say, okay, what did it say? What did Ryan say about that? And what are some things I can think about? I think that's a big part of all of this is really just making sure that we really know ourselves first. We know what we're trying to do. And then I think it's the through line in everything we've been talking about is to intentionality. You have to carve out time for this stuff. If it's truly important to you to become a better leader, if it's truly important you be better at this or even better at something technical in your job, you've got to carve out the time to do it. Managers need to be there to support them to be able to carve out that time. Doesn't mean that they need 5 hours a week, but maybe they need 30 minutes a week. We also need to learn to kind of own our calendar and figure out how we can do some of those things as well. Be really intentional and thoughtful.
Speaking about intentional, I mean, I'm, read from your book, if you allow me, page 3, insight number 2, you kick off the book with this, creating conditions for collaboration that stick. And you talk about creating collision points, look for ways to create intentional moments where teams cross paths. And that could be monthly cross-functional stand-ups, project showcases, or lunch and learns that can spark ideas and build relationships. You say these moments can become more powerful when you connect them to shared goals. And again, reinforcing what we said earlier, you also mentioned clarify the why behind the work. People collaborate more when they understand how their work connects to something bigger. So you start meetings by grounding the team in the purpose of the work and the impact that you're trying to make. Share the end game and not just the task list. This is so spot on. And, let's just be real. This isn't like rocket science. It's super simple things that our tiny little human brains sometimes just forget. And it's almost, again, the repetition for us to go, oh yeah, if we just tell them what the end game is, then we can probably get more buy-in on why we're here and collaborating in the first place. It's a duh, but it's a duh, aha, right?
Yep. That's the whole reason why I kicked off the book with that. Like when I first started writing the book, I'd had a lot of the content in the, if you want to call them chapters or insights. But what I thought was so important was to give people understanding of like, how do I do this? These are very practical. They're easy to read. I can go back. I can think about them. Again, start the reflection process. But how? Like, how do I fit this into my busy, busy, busy life? And that's why I started the book with those kind of 7 different areas and ideas of like how and why can you actually make this part of your life, kind of fit that into the flow of work, but also fit that into the flow of your life? Like, how do you make sure that you can do this and make it just part of your routine so that you do pick some of these up and learn them? And then again, hopefully the flip side of that I can't control, but I want them to do is go use repetition. Again, find those real world experiences to be able to use some of the things that they're learning from that book as well.
It's so good. Ryan, your book is called Quick Bites of Insight, Micro-Sized Learning on Work and Leadership. You can find that anywhere where books are sold, your local bookshop, or even online at Amazon or Kobo, Apple Books, and Barnes & Noble. I'll put the link in the show notes for you guys so you can find it there. Again, thesimplifiers.com. And as we wrap up, there are a few questions I'd like to ask you that I ask everyone that comes on the podcast in rapid fire moment. Here we go. No calculators required. First question is this. What's one book or blog that you're reading these days that is either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Oh, I think everything Josh Bersin does. So I really love Josh Bersin's podcasts and the articles that he puts out.
Okay. Yeah. Josh Bersin is so good. And we will link him up in the show notes for you guys so you can check out that. It's, these are the ways, right? People learn auditory, they learn visually, and they learn kinesthetically using their hands. And this is all part of that multi-sensory process, right?
100%.
So tell me, who is one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
Her name is Justine Folker. So
Okay.
very close friend of mine. She was actually the impetus for me to write the book. I was literally having dinner with her when she said, "Why haven't you written a book?" And I'm like, "What would I say that someone hasn't already said?" And she's like, "A lot, because it's in your voice and people don't think about this the way that you think about it." And I was like, "Oh." So I love Justine. So Justine, for a long time, she's got a counseling background. Then she shifted over to being a Dare to Lead facilitator for Brene Brown's work. And now she's went out on her own and she has her own work around courage. I think she's amazing. I think she's doing wonderful things and really helping this world and helping the work environment. So I would encourage people to go check out and learn more about Justine Folker.
Brilliant. We will link Justine up in the show notes for you guys if you're curious about the work that she does in the world. Again, go over to thesimplifiers.com. I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I think I'm really grateful, one, for this book. It's so exciting to be able to put something like this out in the world. I never expected or even really thought 5 years ago that I was going to write a book. It was something people always ask me about. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And all the support and love that I've gotten. I mean, it just came out recently in April. And I would say that I love all the support and love that I'm getting from everybody. I think that's amazing. That's the big one for me right now. I'm super grateful to be able to put it out there and try to help managers and leaders be better. Like, that is why I'm on this earth. My reason for being here, Mary, is truly like, I want managers and leaders to be better because they have such an impact on people. And so if I can help managers and leaders through this book and the many, many different ways that I do this, I'm going to be a happy camper.
Yeah. Well, if I could be a mirror for you, you're doing it. It is definitely happening. You're making a positive impact on the world. So keep going there. And for those that are curious about Ryan, you can connect with him through his LinkedIn, again, through our show notes at thesimplifiers.com. You'll find that. Connect, send him a DM, say you heard this podcast episode. I think he would really love to hear from you as well. So my final question for you is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and let's say they work in the L&D department and they're like, I make terrible training. I am the culprit. I know I'm making things that make people want to go, oh, click, 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 click. What's one thing you could whisper in their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment wanting to change?
Go right back to the beginning. Why are you doing the training? What is the need? If you think about it almost from a product perspective, which is how I think about everything from an L&D perspective, what is the problem or need in the organization, and how are you trying to solve that with what you're doing?
That's it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yep.
Now go do the thing.
100%.
Ryan, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.